The Jadal hive had always been a place of perfect order. Every corridor of the living station pulsed with soft, organic light. Every being knew its role, its place, and its duty. Chaos was something the hive studied in other species, not something it experienced itself. That was why the silence felt so wrong. Queen Shareth stood at the center of the inner nest, her tall form unmoving, her many eyes fixed on the empty resting chambers before her. 3 chambers, 3 warm hollows grown from living crystal and flesh, all of them empty. Her daughters were gone. At first the attendants believed it was a mistake. The young princesses were curious by nature. They often wandered under escort, asking questions through half-formed psychic thoughts. Guards were sent calmly, without alarm, to retrieve them. Minutes passed, then more. The guards returned alone, confusion bleeding through their controlled minds. The queen reached outward with her consciousness, stretching across the hive, touching the vast web of shared awareness that connected every Jadal. She searched for the familiar emotional tones of her daughters. She expected fear, excitement, or mischief. She felt none of those things. What she sensed instead made her still. Peace. It was faint but unmistakable. The mental echo of her daughters was quiet, steady, and warm, like a calm tide. That alone was impossible. Jadal royal offspring never felt calm for long. Their minds burned brightly, shaped by responsibility and constant psychic pressure from the hive itself. A ripple of unease spread through the station as the queen's mood shifted. Alarms did not sound, but every being felt it. Search teams expanded. Drones moved through organic tunnels. Elder minds whispered old warnings. Rival castes watched each other carefully. Someone spoke the unthinkable word: abduction. Queen Shareth dismissed it at once. No force could enter the inner nest unnoticed. No enemy could bypass the queen's own psychic senses. Still, doubt crept in, unwelcome and sharp. The galaxy beyond the hive was vast and full of strange species. Some hid their presence well. Her attention turned to the newest and strangest presence aboard the station: the human. He had arrived cycles earlier as part of a diplomatic experiment proposed by the Galactic Concord. A single human envoy, placed among the Jadal to test long-term coexistence. Most hive members had opposed it. Humans were unknown, physically fragile, and emotionally unpredictable. Worse, they were psychic blanks. They did not sing into the mental network of the galaxy like other species. They existed quietly, alone inside their own minds. Queen Shareth had allowed the experiment out of curiosity. Now that curiosity sharpened into focus. Ethan Cole was unaware of any of this. He slept. His quarters were small, carved from the station's living walls and adjusted to human needs. The light was dimmed to mimic a human night cycle. Soft air moved gently, carrying faint organic scents he still had not learned to name. He lay on the sleeping surface provided to him, one arm thrown over his eyes, his breathing slow and even. The human had been tired. Diplomacy with the Jadal was exhausting in ways he could barely explain. They watched him constantly, not with hostility but with intense interest. Every word he spoke was analyzed, every gesture recorded. Even silence seemed to mean something to them. Sleep had come quickly. What Ethan did not know was that he was not alone. 3 small shapes lay curled against him. Their forms were smooth and softly glowing, their natural bioluminescence dimmed almost completely. Delicate limbs rested against his chest and arms. Their breathing matched his own. The princesses slept deeply. They had not planned to come here. They had simply followed a feeling. The hive was loud to them, always loud. Voices, expectations, commands, awareness pressing from all sides. Even rest chambers were filled with purpose. As royal daughters, the noise was stronger for them than for others. Then they had felt something new, a quiet place. The human's presence was like a hollow in the storm, no psychic pressure, no demands. Just a gentle, emotional rhythm that felt safe without asking anything in return. Curious and tired, the princesses had slipped away from their guards, drawn by instinct older than thought. They had found the human sleeping. And without fear, without understanding why, they had curled up beside him. Back in the inner nest, the queen's patience thinned. "Expand the search," she ordered through the hive mind. "No chamber unexamined." Warriors moved faster now. Organic doors parted. Sensors scanned every living wall. When the search reached the sector assigned to the human envoy, tension rose sharply. Some guards bristled with anger, others with fear. The human quarters were sealed as per agreement. The guards paused, waiting for permission. Queen Shareth arrived moments later, her presence filling the corridor. She studied the door, feeling the strange calm beyond it. The sense of peace was stronger here. Her daughters were inside. She signaled the guards to open the chamber. The living door unfolded silently. What they saw froze them in place. The human lay sleeping, unaware. Curled around him were the missing princesses, their small forms wrapped against his warmth. They looked younger than ever, vulnerable in a way no Jadal royal ever allowed themselves to be. No wounds. No restraints, no signs of harm, only rest. A warrior raised a weapon instinctively. "Stop," the queen commanded. Her voice carried both sound and thought. The guard obeyed at once. Queen Shareth stepped closer. She reached out with her mind, gently touching her daughter's consciousness. It was deeper now, richer. They were not merely calm, they were restored. Understanding rippled through her, slow and heavy. This human had done nothing. Ethan shifted in his sleep, murmuring softly. One of the princesses tightened her grip reflexively, pressing closer. The queen felt a surge of protectiveness from her daughter, not fear, trust. The guards exchanged uneasy looks. Everything they believed told them this was wrong, dangerous, unnatural. And yet the evidence was before them. The queen straightened. "Do not wake him," she said. "Withdraw." Reluctantly, the guards obeyed, backing away and sealing the chamber once more. Queen Shareth lingered a moment longer, watching through the translucent living wall. For the first time in centuries, she questioned the limits of her own understanding. The hive had always believed strength came from unity, from constant connection. But here, in the quiet presence of a single human, her daughters had found something the hive had never given them: silence. And somehow, that silence was powerful. As the queen turned away, the station hummed on, unaware that something fundamental had changed. The disappearance of the royal daughters was no longer a mystery. It was a revelation. The calm did not last. Queen Shareth returned to the inner nest, but her thoughts stayed with the human quarters. The image of her daughters sleeping without strain would not leave her mind. Around her, the hive reacted as it always did when something unknown appeared: debate, analysis, and fear wrapped in logic. The elders gathered. Their ancient minds pressed against each other in controlled discussion. Some demanded immediate removal of the human. Others argued that the daughters had not been harmed and that no law had been broken. The hive had rules for threats but none for comfort. Queen Shareth listened. "The human did not take them," one elder said. "The princesses went willingly." "That alone is the danger," another replied. "If royal offspring can be influenced without force, the hive is at risk." The queen raised one clawed hand and the mental noise softened. "We will not act out of fear," she declared. "We will observe. We will learn." Still, she ordered constant watch on the human quarters. Not guards at the door, but quiet presence through sensors and distant minds. She would not have her daughters startled awake by weapons and shouting. Inside the chamber, Ethan Cole dreamed. He dreamed of Earth, of open skies and wind moving through trees, of quiet mornings with nothing expected of him. The feeling was so gentle that when he slowly woke, he did not move at first. Something was warm against his chest. His eyes opened. For a long moment, his tired brain refused to understand what he was seeing. 3 glowing alien children were wrapped around him. Ethan froze. His heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay still. The beings were small, about the size of human children, their smooth forms giving off a faint, soft light. Their faces were peaceful. One rested its head against his shoulder. Another had curled around his arm. They were asleep. Carefully, Ethan took a slow breath. Panic would not help. He remembered the rules drilled into him before coming here. Sudden movements could be seen as threats. Loud sounds could trigger defensive reactions. He whispered, barely louder than a breath, "Okay, okay." The princesses did not wake. Ethan stared at the ceiling, his mind racing. He had not invited anyone. He had locked his door as instructed. Yet somehow these royal-looking beings were here, and judging by the guards' earlier reactions to royal symbols, these were not ordinary children. Minutes passed. Finally, one of the princesses stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing softly. She looked up at Ethan and made a small, questioning sound, not alarmed, not angry, curious. Ethan swallowed and offered a small, careful smile. "Hey," he said quietly. "You, okay." The princess studied his face, then settled back down, closing her eyes again. Her grip tightened slightly, as if she feared the calm might vanish if she let go. Ethan felt something unexpected in his chest. Protectiveness. He stayed where he was. Outside the chamber, the queen felt the moment her daughters woke. She felt no fear from them, only mild curiosity and contentment. That eased her concern enough to act. She entered the chamber alone. Ethan noticed the change in the room before he saw her. The air felt heavier, more focused. He turned his head slowly and saw Queen Shareth standing near the entrance, her tall form both elegant and terrifying. He did not move. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "I think there's been a misunderstanding." The queen studied him in silence. Her many eyes shifted between the human and her daughters. "You are not afraid," she observed. "I am," Ethan replied honestly, "but I don't think fear helps right now." That answer surprised her. She stepped closer. The princesses stirred but did not wake fully. One reached out and touched the queen briefly through the psychic bond, sending reassurance. Queen Shareth understood then that whatever this human was, he was not a threat to them. "Did you summon them?" she asked. "No," Ethan said quickly. "I didn't even know they were here until I woke up." "Did you restrain them?" "No." "Did you command them?" Ethan shook his head. "I wouldn't even know how." Silence filled the room. The queen extended her senses, not into the human's mind. He had none in the way she understood, but around him. The space near him felt different, quiet, stable, like standing in the center of a stormless void. Her daughters had felt this and followed it. "You will remain here," the queen said at last. "You will not leave this chamber unless instructed." Ethan nodded. "That's fair." She turned to go, then paused. "You may move," she added, "but do not wake them unless necessary." Ethan let out a slow breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Word spread through the hive quickly, though carefully controlled. Scientists requested permission to study the phenomenon. Philosophers argued over its meaning. Warriors felt uneasy about a power that required no force. Humans, it seemed, carried something the hive had never measured. Time passed. Ethan learned to exist quietly with the princesses. They woke, explored his room, touched everything with curiosity, and asked questions through simple sounds and gestures. He responded gently, using tone and slow movements. He told them stories about Earth, though he doubted they understood the words. They listened anyway. When hive attendants arrived to bring nourishment, the princesses resisted leaving Ethan's side. Only the queen's presence convinced them to return, and even then reluctantly. The queen watched it all. She ordered deeper analysis. The results confused everyone. The human emitted no psychic signal, no dominance, no emotional broadcast, yet his presence lowered stress responses in those around him. "He is a void," one scientist said, "but not an empty one." The queen disagreed. "He is a shelter." As cycles passed, something subtle changed in the hive. Guards near the human sector reported feeling calmer. Workers requested rotations nearby. Arguments ended faster. The human did nothing. That was the most unsettling part. Ethan, for his part, felt the weight of attention growing. He missed Earth. He missed being invisible. Yet when the princesses visited again, curling against him as if he were part of their world now, he accepted it. He did not know what role he played. But the galaxy was beginning to understand that humans were not loud heroes or conquerors. They were something quieter, and that quiet was powerful enough to change everything. The change inside the hive could no longer be ignored. Queen Shareth sensed it first during the daily convergence, when thousands of minds brushed together to exchange purpose and direction. The usual sharp edges were softer. The urgency that normally pressed against her thoughts felt muted. It was not weakness. It was balance. And it radiated from one place, the human sector. She ordered a full gathering of elders, scientists, and commanders, not to accuse but to understand. The hive had survived for ages by adapting, and this was something new that demanded careful thought. Ethan Cole sat alone in his chamber when the summons came. Two attendants arrived, unarmed, their posture respectful. "The Queen requests your presence," one said. Ethan nodded. He had expected this moment. He had felt the eyes on him growing heavier with each cycle. Still, when he stood, his hands shook slightly. He took a breath and steadied himself. The chamber of convergence was vast, alive with soft light and slow movement. Ethan felt very small as he entered. Thousands of Jadal watched him, not with hostility but with focused attention. Queen Shareth stood at the center. "You have changed the hive," she said plainly. Ethan blinked. "I didn't mean to." "That is the concern," one elder replied. "You act without intention, yet the effects are deep." Ethan spread his hands. "I don't have powers, I just exist." A murmur moved through the assembly. Queen Shareth raised a hand for silence. "Tell us about your kind," she said. "Not what you do, what you are." Ethan hesitated, then spoke slowly, choosing simple words. "Humans evolved alone. We don't hear each other's thoughts. Our minds are private. We learn to live with noise inside ourselves instead of outside." The scientists reacted strongly. "Isolation should cause instability," one argued. "It does," Ethan replied honestly. "At first. Then we learn to manage it, we learn to sit with it." The Queen considered this. "And this creates the calm we feel." "I think so," Ethan said. "When you're around someone who isn't pushing anything into you, sometimes your own thoughts slow down." Silence followed. The elders withdrew to debate. Ethan was escorted back to his chamber, but this time the door remained open. Later that cycle, the princesses arrived. They moved more confidently now, no longer sneaking. They greeted Ethan with gentle touches and soft sounds. One climbed onto the resting surface beside him and leaned against his side, copying a human gesture she had seen him use to relax. Ethan smiled. "You're learning fast," he said. Queen Shareth watched from the threshold. She noticed details she had never paid attention to before. The way the human adjusted his posture to give the children space. The way he spoke softly, even when no one demanded it. Her daughters were not weaker for it. They were stronger. Over the following cycles, the Queen authorized controlled exposure. Selected hive members were allowed to spend time near the human, monitored closely. Warriors first, then workers, then thinkers. The results were undeniable. Aggression levels dropped, focus improved, errors decreased, even long-standing mental scars eased. "This goes against all doctrine," a commander protested. "Strength comes from unity." "And yet," the Queen replied, "unity does not require noise." News spread beyond the hive. Other species noticed changes in Jadal behavior. Negotiations became smoother. Threats were answered with calm refusal instead of escalation. Curiosity replaced suspicion. Eventually, the Galactic Concord demanded answers. A delegation arrived, bringing representatives of several psychic species. They entered the hive with confidence, then slowed as they felt the difference. "What is this place?" one envoy whispered. "It feels quiet." They were brought to Ethan. The The reaction was immediate. Some recoiled, others leaned closer, relief clear on their features. "He's shielding us," one said. Ethan shook his head. "I'm not doing anything." "That may be the point," Queen Shareth said. The Conquered proposed a study. More humans, they suggested, controlled environments. Measured outcomes. Ethan listened uneasy. "We're not tools," he said firmly. "We're people." Queen Shareth met his gaze. "And that is why this works." She refused mass deployment. Instead, she proposed a new role: human anchors, voluntary positions, protected, respected. Never forced. Ethan accepted, not because he wanted importance, but because he saw the need. The princesses remained by his side as the decision was announced. One rested her head against his arm, sending a feeling of certainty through the queen's bond. The hive had not lost control. It had gained perspective. Not all welcomed the change. A faction formed, fearful that reliance on humans would weaken the hive. They watched, waited, and finally acted. One cycle, the lights dimmed suddenly. Alarms sounded for the first time since Ethan's arrival. A controlled breach, isolated but dangerous. Ethan was moved quickly, guards surrounding him. The princesses clung to him, alarmed. "Stay calm," he whispered, more to himself than to them. The attackers reached the corridor, weapons ready, minds sharp with anger. And then they stopped. Not because of force, because the closer they came, the harder it was to hold their rage. Confusion broke their formation. Doubt crept in. The quiet pressed against them, asking nothing, forcing nothing. They lowered their weapons. Security arrived moments later. The threat ended without bloodshed. Afterward, the queen addressed the hive. "This is not dependence," she said. "This is understanding. We do not lose ourselves by learning from others." She looked at Ethan. "You have shown us strength without dominance," she continued. "Control without command." Ethan felt the weight of it then, not fear, responsibility. He was still human, still small in the face of the galaxy. But sometimes small things changed the most. As the hive settled into its new balance, the princesses slept once more beside him, their breathing slow and steady. For the first time, the future did not feel loud. It felt possible. The hive changed quietly after that day. There were no grand announcements, no loud celebrations. The Jatil did not mark important moments with noise. Instead, the shift showed itself in small things. Corridors felt less tense. Workers paused more often, not from exhaustion but from reflection. Arguments ended before they became conflicts. At the center of it all was the human. Ethan Cole's role as a human anchor became official, though the title felt strange to him. He did not wear symbols of authority. He did not give orders. He lived much as he always had, except now his quarters were larger, placed near a neutral convergence space where beings could come and sit without obligation. The queen had made one rule very clear. No one was required to be there. Choice mattered. The princesses visited often. They no longer needed permission, and no guards followed them inside. They had grown taller, their bioluminescence brighter, their minds clearer. They laughed now, a soft chiming sound that echoed gently through the space. It was something the hive had never heard from royal offspring. Queen Shareth watched her daughters with a careful eye. "They are changing," an elder observed. "Yes," the queen replied. "They are becoming themselves." That truth spread beyond the hive. Word reached distant systems. Species who lived under constant psychic pressure, whose thoughts were never fully their own, began to ask questions. The galactic Conquered returned, not with demands but with requests. Could humans help? The queen agreed to trials, but on strict terms. Humans would never be owned, never commanded, never placed where they did not wish to be. Ethan helped design the rules. "We don't fix people," he said. "We just sit with them." The first off-world visitors arrived soon after. A delegation from a species known for violent emotional surges entered the hive. They were tense, their minds sharp with barely controlled impulses. They were guided to the anchor space. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, their posture changed. Their breathing slowed. The constant pressure they lived with faded just a little. One of them sat down without realizing why. "I can think," she whispered. "I can hear myself." She began to cry, not from pain but from relief. That moment spread across the galaxy faster than any military victory ever had. Humans were invited not as soldiers or rulers but as companions. Some accepted, many did not. Both choices were respected. Earth was contacted. The human governments reacted with fear at first. They worried their people would be used or harmed. Ethan spoke to them directly, calm and honest. "We're not special," he said. "We're just different in a way that helps." Volunteers came slowly. Teachers, medics, artists, people used to listening. The galaxy learned that humanity's greatest strength was not force or technology. It was presence. Not everyone accepted it. A coalition of species that thrived on control saw humans as a threat to their power. Quiet minds could not be easily ruled. Calm beings questioned commands. They planned an attack, not on the hive, on Earth. The warning reached Queen Shareth before the fleet arrived. For the first time in generations, fear touched her thoughts. Humans were not warriors like the Shadow. Earth was not ready for a galactic assault. She reached out to Ethan. "They come for your world," she said. "We can defend you." Ethan listened, his face pale. "Thank you," he said, "but we need to stand too." The Shadow fleet moved, powerful and swift. But Ethan asked for something unexpected. "Let humans speak first." The Queen hesitated, then agreed. When the hostile fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's system, they expected resistance or surrender. They received silence. A single human vessel moved forward, unarmed. Ethan stood inside, speaking calmly, his words carried across open channels. "You're afraid of losing control," he said. "We understand that fear. We live with it every day." The enemy commanders shouted, threatened, demanded. Ethan did not argue, he waited. The silence stretched, and in that quiet something happened. The constant emotional feedback loop that drove the coalition's aggression began to weaken. Without shouting minds to feed it, their certainty faded. Doubt crept in. Why were they attacking? What did they gain? The fleet slowed, then stopped. The Queen felt it across the stars. The same calm that filled the hive now touched the battlefield. The coalition withdrew. No shots were fired. Earth was safe. After that, everything changed. Human anchors became a recognized role across the conquered. Not everywhere, not for everyone, but where they were welcomed, conflict lessened. Creativity rose. Old wounds began to heal. Ethan returned to the hive, older now, lines of experience on his face. The princesses ran to him when he arrived, wrapping around him as they once had when they were small. Queen Shareth approached, her presence warm. "You have altered the course of history," she said. Ethan shook his head. "We just reminded people how to be quiet." The Queen considered that. "Then perhaps," she said, "quiet was what the galaxy needed most." The princesses grew into leaders unlike any before them. They ruled with empathy, not dominance. They listened before they spoke. Other species followed their example. Wars did not end completely. Pain did not vanish. But the galaxy learned a new way to face it. When tensions rose, when minds grew too loud, a simple request was made. "Is there a human nearby?" And often there was. In a quiet chamber aboard a living station, Ethan rested as he often did, eyes closed, breathing slow. The princesses sat beside him, no longer children but still finding comfort in his presence. Around them the hive thrived, not louder, but wiser. And among the stars, humanity earned a name spoken with respect and gratitude. Not conquerors, not saviors, but the species that could sit with the universe and help it breathe. The alien queen's daughters disappeared. They were sleeping curled up on the human. Sci-Fi Stories.